I'll start with myself. I'm a black man. I prefer to be related to as a black man. But we know that some organizations and some people prefer to use the term BAME. So I'll start with you, Sachin. What do you prefer, black or BAME?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. I think I flip depending on what the subject is and what the topic is we're talking about. So I think if we're talking about, for instance, journalism, and we're talking about the lack of ethnically diverse journalists, I will regularly or often use the phrase BAME, because I think obviously I'm coming at it from a very personal point of view as someone who's from an Indian Asian background. So if I'm talking about the lack of BAME journalists, then I'm looking around and saying there's not just a lack of black journalists, there's a lack of people who look like me as well from my background. And I can speak from my experiences, knowing, I come from a large extended family, and nobody in my family has ever wanted to go into journalism, and one of the reasons is because they don't see people that look like them working on TV or in in the news, reporting for newspapers. So it's a very personal thing to me, and so I use the phrase BAME there quite often. I think when I'm talking about what's going on in football, the actual sport itself, I often talk about, I think it's really important then to divide everything up, because I think the experiences are very different, and I think the experiences of black footballers in terms of, for instance, their lack of opportunities into going into coaching is a very different experience to those from other backgrounds. And I think there's far more deep-rooted prejudice there and far more specific issues there. So I feel uncomfortable using the phrase lack of BAME Premier League managers, for instance. I think we've got to talk about the lack of black managers and talk about why there are so few black managers, the thinking behind it, the prejudice, and the issues around that. So yeah, I'm maybe a little bit on the fence about it, but I think it's a very complex phrase, and I totally understand why a lot of people have an issue with BAME, because it just clusters us all into one group, and our experiences are all very different. But I will use it differently as well, and tailor it for the debate that's in front of me and the debate that I'm discussing at that very time.
Rodney, black or BAME?
Black for me. It's fact that the BAME terminology it's always been there, but it's probably found itself even more so in our conversations and discussions in recent times, COVID, etc., etc. It may be a generational thing, but I'm happy to be called black. I think, and I know that right at The Voice, that's what we describe ourselves as. It's a difficult one, but for me personally, black will do.
I must say at this point, I've used the term in copy, in print media, for reasons of space more than anything else. But what's your experience of using it?
Well, firstly, I don't like it. I just think I understand the difficulties, because there's reports that are written and you're looking into issues around whatever groups, LBGT, BAME, and people within those. I don't know, it sounds like some sort of cluster. And they feel they have to find some definition. Otherwise, how do you write it? As you say, with space, is it too long? But for me, it sounds a bit, it always has sounded a bit condescending, a little bit degrading. Like if you were to put me in a bracket of, I don't know, Jew, Hindu, and Sikh or something. Oh, so, and the girls were talking about this. We've all got differences. We all relate to our own experiences differently, and we all deserve to be, are you then going to put white people in a W something? Like, I encountered it in that we were doing a story that's come out over the last couple of weeks, first in my column and then via the Premier League a few days ago, about a new coaching initiative that's going to see up to 6 coaches a year, initially in a pilot, go into EFL clubs. And it's coaches from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds. And that's what I wrote at the start of my story, because that's what the scheme is. But of course, I then found myself thereafter having a second reference and beyond, having to use BAME. So I just thought to myself, hang on a sec, go back to the guys organising it and say, like, I'm not part of Black, Asian minority ethnic in that sense. So what do you guys want me to refer to these coaches as? And they said, that's where it gets a bit difficult. It is political. It depends who you speak to and personal preferences. But just for the purposes of this, it's what's been agreed with the Premier League and the authorities, BAME. So I put that in my copy, and then quite a few people came back to me and said, sort of, stop using this phrase. If we're black, if we're Asian, if we're minority ethnic, that's what we want to be called. And it puts reporters, like all of you guys too, in a really hard position, because we're not really expressing our own views within reporting. But then we do have the power to express our own views on social media. So it's really difficult. I would rather we just clearly define in these projects, what are you trying to increase, and then just refer to it that thereafter. You know, are you trying to increase black coaches? Then let's say that it's a black coaches scheme. If it's Asian, fantastic. But there are enough different initiatives going on, which I'm encouraged by. But then they just seem all to get bracketed under the same thing. And I don't. This is just a personal view. I don't even think BAME or BAME or whatever just even sounds respectful or nice. I don't like it.
Adrian,
I'm just nodding my head while Dave was talking there, because he just touched on one of the.
Isn't he?
Just one. You know, one of the issues with the term is, you know, say there's a company that want to say they're addressing the issue of diversity. And they've got a part of an ethnic group working within their company. They can tick their box and say, you know, if the phrase BAME is relevant and is being used as the term to determine whether a company are diverse or not. They may only have one ethnic minority group represented within their company, but they can still tick that box and argue, if it's being allowed, that they are diverse. But they may have no black people, they may have no Asian people, but they may have some, you know, people from another ethnic group being represented within their staff. That's my problem with the term. It does group too wide a group of people all in one box. Darren, you obviously wrote a column that was very well received a couple of weeks ago about some of the issues that black men have. Some other males from other ethnic groups may have some of those issues, but not all of them. It's another just small example of how, you know, of the problem with the term BAME, because we don't all have the same problems. Sachin, who's on the group here today, he may have other issues that we don't face as black men. We're not all the same. We don't all face the same barriers. We don't have the same problems, and maybe we're irrelevant. We may not have the same advantages. That's my problem with the term BAME. I'm a black man. I'm happy to be referred to as a black man. Where we're talking about some of these issues in football, I would rather specify black if that's the issue that I'm talking about, rather than use the term BAME. I find it's a term that people who want to claim they're being diverse, it's almost a term that suits other people that want to group ethnic minorities together, rather than the ethnic minorities who are being spoken about.
Adrian, what's your view on the idea that even the debate is divisive and maybe takes us down a rabbit hole that we don't need to go down?
I'm not sure it's divisive. I think it's a very important and good conversation to have, because otherwise you end up having this term that people think, for example, let's say black people, I think black people accept this term BAME and they don't. And if we would rather not be bracketed in a group like that, referred to like that, then the only reason and the only way you'll find out is by having the conversation. I don't think it's divisive. I think what it does is it allows people, me as a black person, other ethnic minorities, to explain to people what they're happy with and what they're not happy with. I don't think it's divisive at all.
Sachin, have any of the guys taken you off the fence?
I totally agree with everything everyone's saying, and maybe it doesn't sound it, but I'm sort of in agreement in the sense that I think what we need to do is, when we're talking about certain things, we need to clarify as much as we can if the need for clarity is there. But I just think, that's what I'm saying, absolutely, when we're talking about a lack of coaching, for instance, I think the issues that affect black men or black footballers is a very specific thing. And I absolutely don't like using the phrase lack of BAME coaches, because I think that really does kind of muddy the waters in terms of what we're talking about there. But just to give like one example where I think BAME is possibly okay, so I did a story a few months ago about the worry, and I think we've all probably written about it in one way or another, the worry that people from ethnic minority backgrounds had about returning to sport because of the the variant figures in terms of how people from different backgrounds were being affected by COVID-19, and it was affecting ethnic minority groups far worse than it was people from non-ethnic minority groups. But that included like the Bangladeshi community, for instance, and it included people from Afro-Caribbean communities and Indian communities, for instance. So when I wrote that, I felt BAME was okay because I was talking about so many ethnic non-white communities that were being affected by this, and it was an issue for those communities. So I felt in that sense it was okay. But if I ever write about lack of coaching opportunities, I think it's absolutely vital to split the categories up and not use the phrase BAME, because I think that completely is utterly disingenuous, and it takes away from the specific issues I think specifically black men and black footballers have when they try and go into coaching and management and executive roles as well. But no, I totally agree with what the guy said. I think it's a debate we've got to have. I'm with Adrian on that as well. I don't feel uncomfortable having this debate.
I think, Darren, I think
process for me as well. You know, I'm learning throughout this entire process as well.
I think where we are in the world right now, whether it be COVID-19, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, etc., and I think we've said it on this platform before, it's now important to continue the sometimes uncomfortable conversations, so that everybody can learn. Black people, white people, whatever the background is, because I think that pre-COVID, there may have been certain conversations, not necessarily the BAME conversation, there might have been certain conversations that might have been way down the agenda or not on the agenda at all. And I think it's just important that, and I think this platform is establishing this right now, that it's good that people from different backgrounds can learn about each other. And the only way you're going to do that is by having these conversations, and they're not always going to be pleasant. They're not always going to be uncomfortable. So I think it's important that we all keep talking, and obviously the wider communities need to keep conversing with each other as well. And that's why we say, will, for example, Black Lives Matter still be as important on July the 2nd, 2021? That's going to have to be important as well. Or will it be a 6-week fix? And there's a lot of people that think cynically that it's only going to matter for a little while.
I love that we're having the conversation. I agree with Rodney. Sorry, my wife was just calling me, probably telling me to come off of chatting about it with you guys. I love that we're having it. I don't feel the uncomfortable at all. Like, no discomfort with any of this. What I feel discomfort about is the fact that I didn't have this sort of conversation. I wasn't more open about talking about it in the past. And maybe with me, I mean, I was very badly bullied growing up for my religion. Not that I'm particularly practicing, but just of what I was born as. That's on the invisible side, because I not many people thought that I was Jewish growing up in the area that I grew up in, and so I was riddled with like jokes and banter and things with people not even knowing. So I got exposed in a completely different way to you guys, because people can see it in the color of your skin, and that sent me into a shell where I've hidden who I am in that sense for many years of my life. And now that we're able to talk about it is really liberating. But one thing that, aside from being comfortable talking about it now, which is beautiful, is the sadness that I feel that we're even talking about BAME. Like, what the hell that we're having to bracket people in reports and in conversations and in media into an acronym. Like, the white people aren't being clustered into upper class, middle class, lower class, or wealthy, or poor, or gypsy, or any. You know, it's well intended, I guess, that people are trying to tackle this, but just utterly disgraceful that we're even like having to use these phrases, and also that you and I and all of us on this call know that there's just this minority there who I'm determined to like put right in a way that I never did before, who almost seem to be reveling in this. They're fighting back and flying aeroplanes over football stadiums and going on counter marches and things like that. And me and my wife and our kids, it's made us more resolute and determined than ever. We're reveling in the fact that like-minded people are thinking the same things. And I've been talking to a few people about going into a few schools in East London and talking, which are like, one of our very best friends lives in Canada Water, and we go there and we're the only white people in a Ghanaian family and community, and we love it and they love us, and it's brilliant, and there's not enough of it. And why didn't I do that earlier? Maybe because we weren't having these discussions and it was more taboo. Well, it's not taboo now, and that's the part that I love.
And that's why I say, David, that's why I think the conversations that we weren't having before, they're pivotal, because it's the only way we're going to come together. I mean, hearing your story about how you grew up and how you were targeted, for the want of a better term, there's a high percentage of black people and other people from other backgrounds that will say, ditto, we've been there ourselves, you know? So I think it's fantastic that we, as you said, that we can come together, and it's shared experiences, really, isn't it? You know, because it's also about relatability. Because sometimes I think we think that my problem isn't your problem. You'd have no idea whatsoever what's going on. Couldn't be further from the truth based on what you just said.
My next step that I've got to try and conquer is calling people out publicly and in the workplace that I've experienced over my whole career, probably, and in education as well. Comments here and there that might be nothing to the majority of people, but you know, if you're that person of a background of faith, a colour, and it hits you like a dagger. But we didn't want to ever, I don't know, cause a confrontation in the school or university or workplace. And now my wife is telling me that she says stuff when she hears it. And even within like extended family and friends, we've had really awkward conversations as me and my wife, like, shall I call them up and say what you posted in that group is wrong? Shall I say it in public in case someone causes a physical confrontation or we start screaming in the supermarket? And that's the bit that I haven't quite got myself through yet.